You are the most like me in a lot of ways. And I tell people all the time, you have taken the best of me and multiplied it 1,000 times. You're what I had hoped to be.
I thought I wasn't going to do this.
And I know that that is more to come from each of you in your own arenas.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of I'll Just Let Myself In, the podcast where we do not wait for an imaginary permission slip, but we go through our God-given doors. Listen, if you can let yourself in somewhere, that means that the mechanism to open the door is around. The key may be under the mat or in the rock, or you might be able to just clearly go through the door. Here at I'll Just Let Myself In, that is the whole premise of this podcast. And listen, we usually start off talking about going into different things. And this episode, in honor of Father's Day, is called Into Fatherhood. And I could not do a Father's Day episode without bringing in my dad, my father, Kevin Gerald. So today on our episode of I'll Just Let Myself In, my special guest is my dad. Give it up, y'all.
Welcome. I feel welcome. Welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Holy Culture Radio and talking about Father's Day. And there's a lot to be said.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to be said because it's a continual process of learning and loving.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. Happy Father's Day to you. And thank you for being the amazing father that you are. I love you.
Thank you so much. And I love you also.
Awesome. And this is going to be a great episode. I can tell you right now. But first, you know what we got to do. We have one of the best segments in podcast television. It's called What I'm Stepping In, where I share with you the sneaker that I have on for today, and my dad is gonna join. So first, Dad, say what's up to the people, and we're gonna get into what I'm stepping in.
Hello, everybody, and shout out to you, Alicia, and Holy Culture Radio.
Yeah, shout out to Holy Culture Radio. Always, I hope you guys are tuning in, checking out the show. We're on Holy Culture Radio every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, channel 140 on Sirius XM Radio. Let's get into what I'm stepping in so you guys can check out our sneakers for today. For me, I have on the Saucony, and yes, that's Saucony, not Saucony. Now listen, if you're from Brooklyn, if you're from New York, you've been saying Saucony for the last 30 or 40 years, but apparently it is pronounced Saucony. But I have on the Omni 9s. I got them on in green. It's like green, orange, and a little bit of metallic gold. This sneaker is super comfortable. It's really giving that walkable sneaker trend that's out right now with Asics and New Balance and all that kind of thing. And so Saucony is doing its thing right now. I'm really excited about the next J-Tip collab. I don't have any of the J-Tips. So if you are, if you love me, you like me, we peoples, and you got to connect, please make sure I get that next drop. But I'm really loving what Saucony is doing right now, and I will be supporting even more. So that's what I'm stepping in. You know the drill. If you like them, go get you some. Dad, tell the people what you're stepping in.
Yeah, today I'm in the Adidas Ultra Boost 1.0. Shout out to the Legacy family. They're a running, walking shoe, very comfortable, and appropriately, they're white, and I'm in the peach state with a peach trim.
Yes, nice. You see where I get it from? Just my dad just described the sneaker so well. Listen, he was recently honored through Adidas Legacy, so it was really cool to see that as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. But as well, y'all know the drill. If you like them, go get you some. That's what I'm stepping in today. So, as I said, I'm super excited about this episode because I have my dad here. And, there are not very many people on earth who I feel understand me as much as my father does, because we're just very similar. We're very similar people. And a lot of the way that I think about the world, a lot of the way that I show up in the world, I don't see in other people until I see or talk to my dad. And I'm like, oh, that's where I get that from. And so, Dad, I'm excited to have you, here. I'm excited for my audience to get to hear from you, get to hear your story, whatever parts of it that you want to share. I want to ask you as we get started, this episode is going to be entitled Into Fatherhood. And we're going to talk a little bit about you, not just as a dad to me and my siblings, but just fatherhood in general.
Okay.
Father figures, coaches, things of that nature. And so I wanted to ask you, when you've been a father now for 40 years, your oldest child is 40 years old. I'm putting you on blast, right?
Okay. Okay. I'm good with that.
You've been a dad for 40 years. What do you feel like you would tell a dad that's becoming a dad for the first time that you've learned these 40 years?
Over the 40 years, what I've learned most is to be there, no matter what the circumstance may be, the extenuating circumstances, the outside circumstances. Be there to the best of your ability, and you'll be surprised what that will do for your child.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. What do you when you think about when you first became a father? You were young. I won't say the age, but you were young. What do you feel like you were ready to be a dad? Do you feel like you even thought about that?
No, I didn't think that I was ready, but one of the things was that I think I was kind of like a later father in respect to what happens in our community and in a lot of communities. I was a father later, but I think that I stepped into it, lovingly and willingly to be a good dad.
Yeah. You were in your late 20s, right? So
Yes.
that is late. And you actually know what, that's right. I'm thinking it's older because I'm old and I don't got no kids yet. But that is later in most communities. And I think that, one of the things that hindsight teaches you or life just teaches you is that when you do something and you are, maybe one of the first people in your family or in your group that's trying to do it a certain way, there are things that you just have to learn, within the time. And so amongst your friends and family, did you see a lot of fathers? Did you have a lot of examples?
Yes, I did have examples. And as I said, some of my friends had children earlier than I did. But I did have some examples, and as in life, you have positive and negative examples.
Yeah.
And even through both cases, you can learn from.
Yeah.
A lot of times we think that something happened negatively that you can't learn from it. I often refer to a point of something saying, I can tell you, I may not be able to tell you what works, but I could definitely tell you what doesn't work.
Yeah. Yes, you do say that a lot. So you have a lot of isms. My dad has a lot of sayings. When I was growing up, when I would call my father's cell phone, he would have these deep sayings or as his voicemail. And so you've gotten and given a lot of advice over the years. What has been the best piece of advice that you have received from another Black man?
There are, I would say, two Black men that's not family that have given me great advice. And one is the late Dr. Walter L. James. And he would always say, everybody knows something about something, but nobody knows everything about everything.
Yeah.
And that means to me, that we all have something to contribute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all have something to contribute, and we all have something to learn. I think
Exactly.
that there's such a, there's June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I don't know if you know that, but June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and June is also the month of Father's Day. And when we think about Black men in society at this juncture right now, I think it's more important than ever for there to be fatherhood, right? Obviously, when you have a biological son, but also father figures in young males' lives. I think it's important that even when men are in their 20s and 30s, that there are men in their 40s and 50s and 60s mentoring and fathering and advising them. And they can get that from a man of any color. But I do think it's something very specific about the Black male experience in America that only another Black male can really help you navigate fully. And so for you, as you were maturing as a man and getting having those figures in your life, what do you feel like was the most helpful thing that they did for you in terms of your maturation?
Well, as I spoke about the late Dr. James, he was a man that came into my life later on when I was a grown adult with children. And as I said, his ism was what I spoke on, and he talked about knowledge, class, and style. Earlier on in life, there's a gentleman named Drake Toledo. His thing was be a strong young man. He through athletics, he taught us to be accountable to yourself, to your teammates, be responsible, and have confidence. So those two gentlemen, especially early on in my life with Coach Drake, was very important. And I carry that message on today.
Yeah.
When I share with young athletes and young people in general.
Yeah, let's talk about athletics. I have on a New Utrecht football jersey. My father played football for New Utrecht in Brooklyn as a teen and was a part of the wave of some of the first Black students in that school. And that is a story in and of itself, just at that time. I think, as you told me before, you didn't take it that seriously, but you knew later on the impact that it had,
Yeah, it was, to make a long story short, I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Brownsville never ran, never will.
You can make the long story long. We got time.
Talking about Brownsville, I'm not a tough guy from Brownsville, but I'm Brownsville tough.
Yeah.
And that means that wherever I go, I can stand, as they say, 10 toes down. Growing up in Brownsville, my mom never allowed me pretty much to go to school with my friends. She didn't shelter me from having friends, but, every intersection, middle school to high school, she never allowed me to. From elementary school, I went to a different middle school from my friend. From middle school, I went to a different high school from my friends. So going to high school, there was a school I wanted to go to, and I didn't get accepted. They wanted to zone me to a school, and that wasn't acceptable to her. So she would get off work. She worked at the post office, the midnight shift. She would get off work, and every day we would go down to the Board of Ed and sit down there and try to convince them to allow me to go to a school. And they were trying to convince us that we had to go to the zone school. So this went on for a little over a month. And at some point, I guess she was getting a little tired too, and they were getting a little tired too. They said, "Ma'am, he's not going to go to the school he wants to go to." And she said, "Well, he's not going to go to the school you want to go to. You want him to go to." So they kind of met in the middle ground, and that's how I ended up at New Utrecht. Now, at that time, the school was probably, I'm sure, was out of compliance as far as minorities. So I was part of the civil rights movement without even knowing that that's what I was taking place in. Me and a host of other young Black kids from Bed-Stuy, Brownsville, East New York.
Yeah, amazing. You were inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago at New Utrecht, and your contribution to the history of that school was recognized. What did that feel like for you?
Well, that was a real surprise and a humbling moment because throughout my time growing up and competing with people, I played with and against some amazing athletes and amazing people. And I always looked at myself as being good, but not amazing. So when I was inducted, it was appreciative and humbling because it was totally unexpected.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was coming. Yeah. And that's life, You get things that happen, amazing things that you don't expect.
Yeah, that's good. It's blessings.
Yes.
Blessings that rain down on you. I want to talk about your experiences in athletics on both sides, right? You've experienced athletics as an athlete, you experience athletics as a coach, you experience athletics as a recruiter, as a ref. On every side, you've kind of experienced athletics. And as a kid who grew up without his dad, but had uncles and father figures and coaches, right? How important is it for this generation? Because you're still working with athletes to this day, right?
Yes.
In many ways, and you can go as far into that as you want to or not. But how important is it for the parents of the generation? Let's start with the parents, because I feel like they the ones that's really confused. How important is it for the parents of the generation to understand the impact that being a part of a sports team or having a coach could have on a child that might be struggling socially?
I believe that for the young people, it's very important because it teaches so many things about what life is about.
Yeah.
Teamwork, success, failure, determination, stick-to-itiveness. There are so many things that you learn from competing
Yeah.
that are like life. You know, the same thing going to happen
Yep.
as you grow old and work and interact with people. You're going to have adversity. You're going to have success. You're going to plan, and that plan is not going to work. So you have to adjust. So these are the things that sports teach you. You talked about the coaches, as you heard me speak about some gentlemen early on in my life. These men, and there's several others. I talked about Coach Drake. There's a gentleman, William Jones, Bobby Jones, we call him BJ, his brother Harold. These are all guys that were in Brownsville that were doing this stuff with youth. And I'm not the only one. Obviously, they are doing stuff with youth that impacted our lives. And a lot of us turned out to be good, positive, strong young Black men. Yeah, we made mistakes. We weren't perfect, but you know, the impact that they played in our life carried on to our adulthood. And as we sometime are together, we joy in remembering them, you know, and the things that I do, I tell people all the time is in honor of them, because I remember asking, why do you do this? You don't get paid. And they said, so that one day when you have the opportunity to do it, you can do it. And now we call it paying forward. But, you know, at that time we did you pay back, you know. And you talked about the parents. The parents are loving. They want the best for their children. Sometimes they don't know what's best for the children in that arena, meaning the sport. Let the coaches coach. Let them develop your child, you know, with your assistance. You don't have to be overbearing with the coaches or the officials. You know, most of these people here are out here doing this for the love of it, and nobody's getting rich off of it at the ground level.
Yes.
So allow them, be respectful, be appreciative, and make it a team with you and the individual that's interacting with your child.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. And I think remembering that coaches have a unique space in a child's life that they may be able to get through to your child when you can't, you know, and it's not just sports, you know, this could be if your child is a part of the debate team or mathletes or a part of a church youth group, right? Your child needs outside influences, outside voices that are positive and that you can trust to tell them the right thing. And so even when I think back on my life, there's so many adults when I was a child who now I'm still friends with. We're kind of like peers now, but they were my mentors in many ways as a child. And as great as, you know, I have an amazing mother who, my mom taught me everything I would need to know to be a good woman in this world, right? She did that. But even with that, there are women who I would not be who I am had they not imparted their wisdom and their life experiences on me and had not guided me and told me, don't do that, or stop doing that, or you're doing too much, you know. Without that, you know, mentorship and guidance, even in my early 20s, I know I wouldn't be where I am. And so community is so important. And to be honest, in this climate that we're in this country right now, community is just going to be more important than ever. You can't get around community. I'm very hard on myself about not getting super sad about what's going on in the government, because my community has always withstood and anything, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
so I know that as long as we stick together and as long as we hold each other up and hold each other down, depending on the
Yes.
situation, I know that we'll overcome. And so those things are very important. I want to pivot. I feel like as a father of three very different people, as a father who, I feel like, if I could be frank, whose relationship with all three of those children have developed at different paces, right? What do you feel like you're learning even now as a father of adults?
That's interesting, and it's accurate the way that you presented it. I'm learning that I still have to kind of nurture and show fatherly care and love and input to all three of my children, but not necessarily in the sense of being overbearing or controlling or trying to demand certain things. For yourself, it's more like we bounce things off one another. I feel comfortable talking to you about things that's going on in my life. What do you think? How do you feel about this? What do you think about something I'm thinking about doing or something I'm doing? With your sister, I like to kind of nurture her more, encourage her more, and be more supportive of her because that's what I feel she needs. And with my son, your brother, I just want to let him know that I'm here for him, that I'm proud of him, and I'm happy where he's at in life, and that I know that life is going to improve for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all three of us feel that you're proud of us. I think all three of us feel that you are happy with where we are.
Yes, I am.
We all three, I can confidently say, try to lead a life where our parents don't have to worry about us, where our parents don't have to worry about if we're going to be all right. Now you are going to worry because you're our parents. That's what parents do. And we worry about y'all.
Absolutely.
Like that's love, that's family. But I think that there's a mutual respect amongst us all, which I think is helpful,
And healthy.
And healthy. Yeah. And I always tell people that our relationship has evolved. We always had a good relationship, never had a bad one. But I think it's definitely evolved over the years. And growing up in a home, I always say I grew up in a single parent home, but my father was very involved. And sometimes people are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, he never missed a Christmas or a birthday or a graduation or anything important in my life. He just didn't live with us, And I think that there were, my parents were married, so it's not like, and listen, that's no slam against anyone whose parents didn't get married, but I think that did bring a little bit of a different type of stability when it came to like co-parenting. It wasn't like you had kids with some chick you didn't really like that and then was trying to figure it out on the back end. It was like, we were married, this didn't work, but we're still gonna, I'm still gonna be very much involved in my children's life. And I think that, for me growing up, there were feelings of uncertainty in my relationship with you just because we weren't in the home. And I remember as I went to high school where my dad worked, which I did not want to go to this high school. It's the best decision I ever made, but I did not want to do it. Or it was ever made for me because both him and my mom were like, you going. But I went to high school in Harlem at Frederick Douglass Academy. I'm from Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy. I wanted to go to high school with my friends. I wanted to go to Midwood or Banneker or something, boys and girls. I did not want to go all the way to Harlem. And I had to wear a uniform. And I was like, uniform? Like, I've always been into fashion. High school was going to be my time to step. And it wasn't no stepping. I was stepping in that blue and white and making sure I was academy, as they used to say. So at that time, going to high school where my dad worked, I got to see my father every single day for like 4 years. And I think it really fortified our relationship in a way that my siblings didn't necessarily get. One, we're more alike. I'm more like my father than I'm like any person on earth. So that already is it gives us I think a different type of bond. I think my sister is more like my mom. My brother is like himself. I don't know who Jared is like. I don't know who Jared is like. He's a fantastic human being. I'm going to get him on the couch eventually too. One of my favorite people on earth. But I'm definitely like my dad. And so I think that made our bond easier. But even in, as I said earlier, the last decade, I feel like our relationship has just blossomed like a flower, like truly.
I agree.
There's been a lot of different circumstances. One, I went through a breakup in my mid-20s, and it forced me to have a conversation. I don't even know if you remember this, but it forced me to have a conversation with you about heartbreak, and that guy not being the first guy to break my heart, and that my relationship with you as a child, like I wanted more from you. And that allowed you to explain to me where you were at as an adult. I got to talk to my father as an adult and really hear him and listen to him. And we just started, like you said, bouncing stuff over each other, just sharing, like having a real friendship. We always were friends, like, because we liked the same stuff. But now we were like heart friends, like I felt a deep emotional connection to you since that moment. And I've never not felt it since then.
Yeah, well, that I remember the situation. I remember telling you that it will pass. I remember you telling me that, it wasn't, he wasn't the first male to break your heart. And when you said I was kind of taken aback by it, and I was hurt by it, and rightfully so. When someone you love, your child, your daughter, when you're a man, because your daughters you have particular love for, that you probably, the only other person that's probably comparable is your mother, and then your wife, and they're all three like 1A, 1AA, they're so close. But your daughter, when you're a male, you have a daughter, you want nothing but the best for her, because as a man, what lays in wait for her as a woman. Yeah. So you only hope the best for her. So when you told me that, it kind of, some people say force, but I'm gonna say it kind of had me open up to you about where I was as an individual, certain points in my life, where I am now with you, meaning at that time, and where I'd like to be moving forward. Yeah. And I think that dynamic opened up everything. Yeah. And I probably never said this to you before, but I think by us developing that, it just opened it up for your brother and your sister. It just opened it up for your brother and your sister to accept certain things and believe that we could move forward in an extremely positive nature. Yeah. So and with both your brothers, we joke, we laugh at each other. We know what jokes are coming. Yes. Sephra knows what jokes going to come when a certain subject comes up. Jared knows when a certain jokes are going to come when a certain subject comes up. I have nicknames for all of you, which I'm not going to say. You guys could disclose those at your own leisure. Yes. But and to this day, I still call you guys those nicknames from time to time. And like you're smiling now, when I say it to you, I get the smile.
Yes. I love it. I think one of the things I really try to implement, or not implement, but try to communicate to dads is it's never too late. There's so many dads who never apologize to their kids, who never explain, right? It's not about making excuses, but there were real reasons that things, you know what I mean? And I needed to hear those reasons. Right. Now it's up to you as the child to, if you're going to be, you're just making excuses or whatever, and I won't speak too much to this because it's their story to tell, but I had some very serious talks with my siblings about forgiveness. Our parents are human beings. They are human beings who had a whole life experience before we got here, who may have dealt with fatherlessness themselves. Even my mom, again, I won't tell her, I'm gonna get her on the couch too, but I won't tell her story. It's her story to tell. But, even having a dad in her life, it wasn't the type of dad she would have wished for,
Yeah.
even as amazing as my grandmother was, and, and as amazing as my Nana was, there are things they did to y'all or around y'all that affected y'all. And I try to help my siblings and all adult children remember our parents are people. So we have to, if we want peace and if we want a good relationship with them,
Right.
we have to give them grace and forgive. Doesn't mean you can't express. I'm very good at expressing to you and my mom.
Right.
But I think that's what makes our relationship so good. A lot of kids don't want to say nothing because they think, but sometimes that's the breakthrough.
Yes. Well,
that you need.
Talking about my relationship with my children, one of the things that I've put aside, I'll carry it forever because it is what I am. I'm your father, I'm your dad. But one of the things I put aside when I'm talking to you guys and dealing with situation, or want to voice something, or you ask me my view, I think of it more like now as like I'm a counselor. I don't demand that you do what I say. Doesn't mean what I say is 100% right or it's going to work, but I'm a counselor. I give you what I have from my strength, hope, and experience, and hope that it works for you.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you've heard me say this time and time again, that I'll say the greater majority of parents, that when they give their child advice, something, they're saying it so that the child can be successful.
Yes.
They're not digging a ditch and say, walk that way. They are telling you what they think will be the most successful thing for you to do in that situation. Now, it don't always turn out to be successful.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. But when they're giving you that information, they're doing it from a point of hoping that you're successful.
Succeed. Yes.
And shout out to Leroy and Lucy.
Yes.
I had the best in-laws.
Yes. Shout out to my grandparents.
Yeah. And
my Nana.
Of course,
my dad's mom. I had really great. I always felt very loved. And it informs how people, you're so confident. I've never not felt like a superstar ever in my life, in my family. You know what I mean? So even if I was never successful anywhere else, I always knew I was loved. My skin color was always champion. Shout out to my aunts. My Aunt Sharon called me chocolate chip from the day I was born. My mother's family always, there's just always a lot of love. You was telling that story about Nana at the border ed, and I'm like, that's me. That's me. You tell my husband probably like, that's me. My kid, we talk now. We don't even have kids, but I talk now about the education. I will not allow them to be somewhere where they're not going to be, nurtured in the way that I feel like they need to be nurtured, and I there's so much of them all inside of me, even Leroy.
Talking about the education and the part with my mom, you call her Nana, I call her Mama, fighting for me to go to certain schools. We have to remember at that time, it was the norm that you would think, and it didn't have to necessarily be so, but you would think that in other communities, there were better opportunities. And it's a fact. Let's not say to think. There was a fact, maybe not in Brooklyn, New York, but other locations, and possibly even in Brooklyn, New York, that the opportunity to be better educated were not necessarily in our communities. So I understood later on why she was so adamant in that and what she was doing. As I said, I think some of my friends that went to some of those schools in my community are very intelligent, very successful. They can rival in a lot of things with anyone else in the world. But at that time, her thinking was that I'm going to try to do the best for him to get him to be as ready as possible. By the way, with that, shout out to Coach Alan Leibowitz, my high school coach. I talk to him regularly, and this is 50 years ago. And that's the thing. He's a good man.
And he loves you.
Yes.
Cares about my nephews, ask about them, it's I know you guys heard Leibowitz, so you know he's not a black man, but that's important too, to know that there are people in and outside of our community that benefit our community when they care about our young people, and I have people in my life who've been black, white, and everything else who have helped me, and it's important. I love that that you guys still talk 50 years later.
Yeah, he gets on me because I still call him Coach. He always tell me, "You can call me Alan now." Every now and then I'll say it.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, you've retired in the last several years, even though you still be moving and shaking. You've retired and you're on a different side of life right now, right? Trying to figure out, what your next thing will be, but also really prioritizing family, prioritizing your time with your grandsons. Yeah. Tell me about this era.
It's wonderful. I mean, I've been working to some degree always. I came up in a family that, hardworking people, that understood the value of earning a living. And my parents and family taught me that you have to be able to sustain yourself. Mm-hmm. The family wasn't a family that looked for, my parents didn't look for me to be able to develop, to take care of them. If that had happened, of course I would have done it. Mm-hmm. They would have appreciated it. But the development was that you have to be able to take care of you, especially as a male. Yeah. And even my sisters, even more so for them, because like I said, being a woman is special in itself. So they were adamant about us being able to just take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that we grow up so that we could work and take care of them.
We're going to talk about that too in a second.
And as far as work and, I had a wonderful career. I had a couple of careers. Yeah. I had a couple of careers.
Let's talk about the longest one.
But I want to talk about the career with the New York City Police Department, School Safety Division. I went into that, not thinking, knowing that it would take me where it took me. I became a supervisor in a leadership position, and for I would say 28 years, I was what they call a boss. Mm-hmm. After 4 years at my position, I was put into a leadership position and supervisory position. And for 20 years, that's what I did. Yeah. And again, with that position, it all goes back to what I learned through my activity with those men I spoke about early on and later. Mm-hmm. My early coaches, my later mentors, and my ability from my athletic career. Like I said, I think I was a good player, but I played with some amazing people. But stuff that I learned, that if I had done certain things earlier on in my athletic career, I would have even excelled even more. Mm-hmm. But now I could take those experiences and use them in my career to excel and to raise people up.
Yeah, I love that. And you've done it, and you retired, and there's, articles of you wrestling knives out of hands, and there's a time where people were bringing guns to schools and all those things, and you really are a hero.
Thank you.
You really are a hero, and so many people still refer to me as Gerald's daughter. Like, you Gerald's daughter, right? I'm like, yes. And so as a sergeant over all the schools that you were over, and just a presence in Harlem particularly while you were at FDA and, the other schools that you manned, you've been awarded and rewarded and recognized all the things. But I want to just recognize you as your child, for providing that sense of safety and community for so many people. And, I'm proud to be your kid. I'm proud when people say, "Oh yeah, that's Gerald's daughter." I'm like, yes, I am.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that, you talked about a little earlier was the input of how community works. And I didn't set out to be law enforcement. That was never one of my goals,
Yeah.
but I stepped into it. It became a career, and I tried to do it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
One of the things while I was working long hours, arduous hours, and as you said, you were there for a lot of them, especially during that time when you were a student at FDA, was that I had confidence. My belief was that there's someone putting in that same effort for my children at their schools. The parents could entrust that I had their child's safety at the forefront, Also, it wasn't just the law enforcement aspect. It was the mentoring, You talked about me coaching. I did coach, assistant coach at the school. With the basketball team, we had some amazing players. We had some amazing seasons. And but it was also the mentoring of the students in general. It wasn't just about just law enforcement. It was life lessons. How if you do this, it's going to impact you in this way. Why I took certain steps to protect you rather than a silly mistake you made as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 14-year-old that could deter you from being successful as a 22-year-old or a 30-year-old. So that was important, and it was a very fulfilling career. As you said, certain awards, I'm humbled by them, and even I don't talk about it a lot. I don't talk about it a lot. But I was given certain awards for things that I've done, and I'm very proud of it. I am proud of them, and I really need to get my family really to see them, where they're at, how I'm on certain boards, for lack of a better word, or posted my name. It'll be there forever. So that's one of the things I want to do in this retirement. Is to take my grandsons to see their granddad's name up in history. And that's a beautiful thing that they can see that you can accomplish things and impact people. One of the things that I learned from one of my friends who, like I said, a great athlete, he were in arenas that I wasn't able to get to, but the late great Jim Brown told him that, if you haven't done anything to impact the youth in your community, you haven't done anything. That's really a strong statement for us as people.
Yeah, absolutely. And youth and community really start at home. And you now have 3 grandsons. My brother has 3 amazing, beautiful, smart. One of them is only 6 months, but he's beautiful and smart. Children. And so you have 3 grandsons, which is extending your legacy. They have your last name. I think I want to talk about something that may be a little bit difficult, but I think it's important. You had to, in order to have the relationship with your grandsons that you have now, you had to repair your relationship with your son, right?
Yes.
And like I said earlier, so many dads never apologize. They just never get it right? Yeah. But you've gotten it right, with your adult son. I want you to talk about your experience, but also talk to dads who need to get it right with their son. Getting it right with your daughter is right. We got it right. We're good. Been good. Daughters are different. A lot of times dads never go back and get it right with their sons. And some people die not ever having gotten an apology or having that conversation with their dads. And so talk to me about that experience with you and my brother and just what you would give advice to other dads with their sons.
Well, that in itself takes a lot of you being confident and humble. You have to humble yourself, because when there's the disconnect, for lack of a better word, they may not be sure of exactly where you're coming from. They don't need necessarily the hard hand. You know, you have to nurture them through my coaching experience and my athletics experience. Again, you know, I learned some things. I'm going to give you a point of reference. I coached a kid, and he was one of the better players. So a lot of times I during the game I'd be saying certain stuff, and he'd be like, "Coach, that wasn't me. I didn't do that." And I said, "Yeah, but I said you because I know if I say his name, I'm going to lose him for the rest of the game." So I came up with this thing. I says, "Okay, so when I say your first name, I'm talking about somebody else. When I say your last name, I'm talking about you." So when I said his first name, it's because somebody else making a mistake. But I needed him to hear it so that they could try to get it right. When I was talking about him, something he did himself, I would use his last name. So I say that to say that you have to figure out ways to communicate to get through to your son what you need to get through, like I say. And one of the things is to be humble, you know, because he's a man now in a lot of these cases. He's a grown man with grown man responsibilities, you know. He doesn't need to feel as though that you're still looking at him as a young boy, you know. And you have to communicate that your love for him, that you want the best for him, you know. And you have to admit that there are things that he's better at than you. You know,
how's that for you with your son?
With my son, it's really a wonderful thing. You know, Jared and I have a very, very healthy relationship. As I just stated, that I tell him all the time what I feel he's better at than me, what he's done better than me as a dad, as a man, and it has allowed him to open up more to me, because he comes to me and he says, "Dad, now I understand
certain things,
what you were saying, you know, when you said this, with certain situations, you know, with time with family and earning and things of that nature. You know, I see what you're saying, you know." And what he does is that we now can joke one another. I have a running joke with him. He can have a running joke with me, and it doesn't get chippy, or we don't feel any kind of way, because we're back to love immediately, you know, because we know it's from the heart and it's pure.
Yeah. And do you feel like for you, going to him and having the conversation that you had with him, having the conversation you had with me, having the conversation you had with Sephra, because they were all individual conversations, do you feel like it made you a better man?
Yeah, yes, I think it made me a better man, because, like I said, there are certain things that Jared has done in his life, and especially in his life as a father, that I am extremely proud of. And I felt compelled to tell him how proud I am of him for doing it, and what I felt that he was better than me at, you know. And you know, it's not always easy to tell someone that they're doing something better than you when you feel, you know, that they thought that, you know, you didn't do such a great job, you know. So to see him do it better, in my estimation, and to let him know, I think it meant the world to him, and that means the world to me.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I'm very grateful for about you, as I start to round things down, is that as a father and with fatherhood, you have taken pleasure in humbling yourself to apologize, but you have not let that abdicate your role as a leader in our lives. It's not this, and you said it, confidence and humility, right? It's not this head down, you know, I just, you know, I'm just gonna be humble, I'm just glad to be here kind of thing. It's like, no, I've made my amends. I'm still your dad. Here's what I think. You're not demanding. You've already said it all, but you categorize it perfectly. I'm not demanding, but I still have a role of authority in your life, and I love you, and I'm gonna still protect you. I'm still gonna be here for you. And when I met my husband, you know, we talked about our upbringings and all these different things, and I remember telling him about you and telling him about what I could just never accept from a man because of my father. You know, I'm like, I can never be with a man who doesn't provide. I can never be with a man who doesn't protect. I can never be with a man who doesn't respect me. It doesn't respect my mind. My father has never made me feel like I'm not smart enough to advise anybody, including him. So why would I marry a man who acts like I can, and so much of the best decision I've ever made outside of following Christ is marrying my husband, comes from how you not necessarily raised me, but how you treated me and how you treat me to this day. So a year and a half ago, you walked me down the aisle as I was shaking like a leaf.
Yes, you were.
And he was just whispering me, calm down, it's okay, relax.
Breathe.
Breathe. Yes, that's what he was saying. Just breathe. It's so funny because my dad could get really loud, but he could also get really quiet. And really, he has a very unique ability to help me to center. Like when I'm really feeling, hype about something, and my husband is the same way. They bring me to center. So far, I'm your first daughter to get married. We are calling on Jesus for a husband for my sister. But how did it feel to give your daughter away? How did it feel giving me away to my husband?
Well, shout out to my son-in-law. Meeting him, first of all, hearing you talk about him and hearing you talk to your friends about him and knowing that whole, how some of that transpired, I was like, okay, she's kind of in a good space. She's heading in the direction that she's comfortable with. Yeah. And then meeting him and actually just conversating with sometime on the phone, and then meeting him, and then the way that he asked to be your husband, asked for you, asked of me, would I allow you to be his wife? It really was really nice. It was a throwback. It showed the kind of individual he was, because when I tell people that story, they say, wow, he really did that. He asked for your daughter's hand. You went out and you guys talked and you met and you shared, about each other. So I and then your glow, I knew you were in a good space, and he hasn't let me down, he hasn't let me down. And I know what I want to be, and you're going to smile and you're going to laugh. You know how Lucy Mae Isaac was with me.
Yes.
In regards to your mom. That's what I want to be for your husband.
Yeah. And you are.
His champion.
Yes.
I will always champion him.
Yes.
Now, he's not perfect. Nobody is. But I will always champion him to you,
And you do. What I love about you guys' relationship is I always joke with him. I say, when I used to come to New York and stuff, my father used to be like, you good? You need money or whatever. The second he met G, he was like, you good? Enjoy. All right, see you later. Because I used to come to New York and stay with my dad. And even on our first date, my dad took me, and I was like, on our second date, I was like, I don't feel like going. My dad was like, you better go on that date. You better go on this date with this guy. Like, he seems like a good guy. And so the amount of trust, I remember when we got engaged, some of y'all know the story. My husband surprised me and brought my family down and all this stuff and did a party. And I remember us all just crying so hard. And I remember you just thanking him and just being like, thank you, man. Like, and that memory, I think about it often because your approval is so important to me. I could have never married a man that you didn't approve. I just couldn't have. That just would have never worked for my brain. You know what I mean? And it is like your championing him even before we got married. It made me feel more ready to be a wife. Like, okay, this is I'm making the right decision. My mom too, who I feel like my mom she just trained me to be an amazing wife. Just watching her be a woman. But she was going to love him regardless. You know what I mean? She loved him as a man, men.
Yes. We had many conversations.
Exactly. Men. And you've been telling me about men since I was old enough to have these types of conversations, about the type of man I needed. So for him to have your approval just really put my heart and mind at ease. And there's so many characteristics of you that I see in him, that I see in, myself as well. But just so many characteristics that make me feel safe and protected in my marriage. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is the best thing. And so I always cherish the fact that we were long distance and he met up with my dad on his own, unbeknownst to me, to ask for my hand in marriage. So I love that.
And shout out to your mom. We've heard the story already earlier in the talk that her and I didn't make it as husband and wife, but shout out to her. She gave me 3 healthy, beautiful kids, and she did the heavy lifting. I say it all the time. I don't have no qualms about saying that she did the heavy lifting with the kids. And to this day, I don't think that she realized how much I appreciate her for that, But that's reality. And she did an amazing job raising 3 kids at a time, that it was tough. I'm sure it was tough for her being a single mom,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, the 90s, was no joke. But she did the best she could to raise us up in a way that really taught us morals and principles. I always tell people I had the best of both worlds. My mom would play R&B and gospel. It's like soul music and gospel. And then my dad put me on to my hip hop and R&B roots, as well as all the soul and all the, if you have been around me and heard me talk about music, you know how nerdy I get with who played what and all that. I get all that from my dad. All that comes from my dad. And I really feel like I had the best of both worlds in terms of parenting. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for all the ways that you've grown and changed. You are a pleasure to have as a father. You are an incredible father of adults. Sometimes I tell people you may struggle to be a parent of young people, right? That's just nature, right? I worry. I'm like, Lord, help me be patient, help me be kind. But I know I'll be a great parent of a teenager or adults because I'm good at working with that age group,
Yes.
And I think that I'm just grateful that the Lord, has kept us all. So
Amen.
that I feel like we're living in our harvest season as a family.
Yeah.
When I tell people that I have a group chat with both my parents who are divorced, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. Because they respect each other. You know what I mean? We ain't talking about nothing crazy in there, but every morning my father will send us an encouraging message, a spiritual message, something to encourage us and fortify our day. My sister-in-law sends pictures of my nephews and my brother. We sends jokes and my sister sends pictures of the dog. And if I'm on vacation, we just love each other. It's not every 5 seconds, but there's a safe space. And I know for a fact that if anything was to happen to anybody, we will all show up and be there for each other. And I'm insanely aware of how much of a blessing that is. Not just that we're all alive, but that we're unified.
Yes.
It is a blessing. And so into your fatherhood, you may not have been as certain or as sure, but you've done a heck of a job. And I really want you to know that.
I thank you for that. And, one of the greatest things about my fatherhood and my parenthood is that no matter who I meet, when they talk about you, Jared, and Sephra, they tell me how amazing you guys are, how great of people you are, and that how beautiful people you are, that you're loving, caring, helpful, respectful. Nobody's ever come to me and told me anything about any one of my children that they seen them doing something crazy, even child stuff, Nobody, I heard Jared cursing out in the street. I saw Lish or Sephra hugging up on some boy. I'm talking about his youth, and he's never adults. And I've never heard anybody come to me and say anything crazy about that. And, like you said, being in your life in the capacity that I was, a dad that wasn't in the home, I still see my input in each of you. In a particular way. Like you said, I agree with you. You are the most like me in a lot of ways. And I tell people all the time, you have taken the best of me and multiplied it 1,000 times. You're what I had hoped to be.
I thought I wasn't going to do this.
And I know that is more to come from each of you in your own arenas,
Yeah.
But like I said, the best qualities I have, you've taken them and multiplied them by the thousands. And for that, I'm grateful. I love to see you guys succeed my station in life.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. Now I'm going to smile. Now I'm going to get back to being, TV strong. But it's real. The tears and the emotions are real, and it's real coming from me. That's why these emotions are coming out.
Yeah. No, it's important, and all three of us just want to make both you and my mom proud. And I have the best sibling. My siblings are so much better people than I say this all the time. They're just better people. I'm successful and I may be on the camera or whatever. My siblings are 5-star people.
Yes.
Just, my sister is so smart and so kind, so loving,
Dependable.
so funny, so dependable, but just brilliant. She really is brilliant. My brother too, very smart, could do anything he puts his mind to. There's no person on earth that I think could get through my brother to get to me. If someone's trying to get to me, they got to get through my brother, my father, my husband. And they ain't getting through. And there's no one who could get through my brother to his kids, his wife. He would scale a wall for those children and his wife. They are just good people. I would pick my siblings in any lifetime. Any lifetime, I wouldn't pick different siblings. And I just love them so much. And even our relationships are developing and growing,
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful thing, like you said, you and my mom didn't make it, but you created a beautiful legacy through the three of us. And now the next generation of grandkids, which hopefully I'll be able to add to at some point. But we ask a question here at the end of our show, and is, in the grand scheme of things, what do you want your legacy to be? And so for you, when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
That I help to build good people within my family, within my community, and with the people that I interacted with in my career. That I help build good people, and that they could take our time together and impart that to their family, other people that they had worked with in their community. So therefore, we will continue to uplift across the board.
Yeah, I love that. I think you've already done that. So your legacy is well on its way and intact. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this. I'll cherish this forever.
And thank you for having me again. Thank you to you and Holy Culture Radio.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing, and I can only believe that this is, as I said earlier, just the beginning for you. There's so much more that I believe you're going to accomplish, and I pray that I'm here physically to see it, but also I know spiritually I'll know.
Yeah. I love you, Dad.
I love you too, Alicia.
I love you. So this has been another episode of I'll Just Let Myself In with your girl Lish Speaks. Thank you so much for watching, for tuning in, or for listening from wherever you are listening from. If you are joining us on Holy Culture Radio, thank you for being part of the speakers there. Listen, I want to hear from you. Please leave us a review. Let us know how you're feeling about the podcast. Leave comments if you're watching us on YouTube. Leave comments if you're looking at content on Holy Culture, because we want to hear from our audience. We'll be here on Holy Culture every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, channel 140, Sirius XM Radio. We'll also be on YouTube at our regular slots and on every podcasting app that is available to you at our regular slots as well. this month being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, being the month of Father's Day, I want to continue to encourage my brothers out there to take your mental health seriously. I want to encourage the dads to be the father that God has ordained you to be. Your place is cemented in our communities and in our families, and we need you. Listen, I want to see you again, same time, same place next week. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you then. Peace.